Namaste. Good morning. As we're nearing the end of my journey with this Hayang Zendo teaching, sharing videos, approaching number 333, my magic number, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank YouTube for providing me with this opportunity to share. And primarily this has turned out to be kind of like my spiritual autobiography. It's a chance for me to, in this format that I really like. I like this relationship. At least I feel that I'm talking to someone. Really, I'm talking to a little green dot up there. I'm talking to the camera on my iMac screen. But I feel like it's interactive. I can feel you out there, even though there's not often many of you, and it doesn't matter. But anyway, I'd be remiss again if I didn't take this time to say to YouTube, I really appreciate the opportunity that you've provided me with, this beautiful platform. And all I have is a $10 microphone, the camera that's built in my 8-year-old iMac, and you and me and life and experience. And I'm going to list some Brian Jones on Quora. I look at Quora a lot, and I look at Facebook only for some of the spiritual sites that I have share nice photos with a short. I really appreciate those with a photo and a short message above or below. I really appreciate, and it's meaningful. And sometimes these, most of my friends tell me, especially my non-native English speakers, that 33 minutes that I've devoted to these sharings are too much for them. But 33 is my number, and I went with it. Okay. So Brian Jones again was somebody that I appreciate. Okay. And somebody asked him about the best spiritual teacher, and he said on YouTube. He said the best spiritual teacher on YouTube or anywhere else on the planet is the one you learn from. The responsibility is mostly on you. Are you willing to receive it? Are you open to new ideas? Are you going to do what a teacher requests you to do? Well, I always say question anybody that's requesting you to do anything. I have a little caveat. Sorry to Brian Jones. If not, you could actually miss meeting your spiritual guide, one that is capable of your total transformation. Now again, he and I cross paths on this. He accredits his master with enlightenment, and I tend to be of the school where I bless my teacher for taking me to the abyss and telling me to jump and then turning and walking away. I totally committed to personal responsibility for me and everyone else to remember what they've forgotten, to separate, to get rid of separation, division, and the ego, and embrace instead the oneness, the wholeness, the completeness of the universe. So let's not bring it down to who is the best and people all shouting out their fave guru. I haven't been too involved in that. I don't shout out too many people. Less and less as time goes by. No guru would ever want their student to stoop so low. It insults the teacher. Why not focus on your best? What is the best I can do practicing right now, today? That ultimately is the only thing that matters. We ourselves are our own path. But to fully realize this will take the sum total of one's life and the dedication of regular practice, and hopefully a real spiritual guide can indeed help you become the totality of you. That's why we're here, to be our best. Yes, again, less credit to the guru and more credit to the individual. It's the will. And then the willingness to devote your life is basically to the sole purpose. To go home, to remember the forgotten, to abide in the joyful condition that is our birthright. Okay, so I've done that now. I've thanked YouTube. I would mention a couple other people, maybe one or two other people. As I get down, I see that today we're on number. There's 4 left. Yeah, 4 left. Not counting today. So when I finish this, it would be 3. And yesterday I did something that was really on my mind. I titled the talk "Space-Time Fabric Number 1, Part 1," because I realized as I was into yesterday's video that I would never complete what I had set out to and intended to do. So today is Space-Time Fabric 2. And it turns out, maybe I should rename, I won't, but maybe I should go back and rename yesterday's, because I talk more about tips to people starting out and the necessary commitment and dedication, and some of my, rehashed again, some of my personal experiences with awakening. Remember the gerund form, being, awakening, loving. It's a continuous, and for me, it's a continuous spiral. I love the continuity of the spiral. There's always more. There's always more. Yes, I love that. Always more. And what I was really talking about, space-time fabric, they talk about more familiar is the space-time continuum. Okay, Einstein and which morphed into quantum physics, even though it conflicted with, it was in agreement with a lot of what Einstein said 120 years ago, and some of it is kind of diverged, and I like divergence. I love divergence because it becomes dogma, it becomes pandemic if you stick to the letter of the law. I like flexibility, really a lot. And the funny thing is, my own physical flexibility is none too good. My mental, my emotional, my spiritual flexibility is immeasurable. But the physical forms of yoga, which my wife keeps insisting will help me. I can't get through the first 5 minutes of the directed yoga, hatha yoga teachings. And I know it would help, but I've lived with this stiff body. It kind of suits me. I'm a little bit stiff in my personality, so it's not surprising that my body is a little bit stiff. I'm flexible in so many ways that maybe I have to be less flexible in some way. You can't have it all. Can't have it all. Everything your way. So the space-time continuum, I'm used to that. But then recently I've been looking at space-time fabric. And when I say fabric, when I say space-time fabric, I'm talking about entirety of the infinite universe. This matter of no-thingness, of nothingness. That nothingness, that no-thingness, and matter exist, and matters in the form of energy. But also I've found that, lifting the veil, awakening could be reformatted, rediscovered in lifting the veil. Hey, the light is changing as my hands go up. Lifting the veil. And this gossamer becomes finer and finer and finer. The veil that is first is pretty much, you can barely see through it if you can at all. And one by one. So it's this part of this space-time fabric Then I'm talking about lifting away, and I've been really experiencing that a lot. And one of the things that, this continual process, of course, there's an endless supply of fabric, space, time, fabric. It's unlimitless. It's inherent in its nature. So there's another veil, another veil, another veil. But the veil that was, this mathematical veil that came to me, that I started, I have a very deep interest in quantum physics, but very little understanding. When I read something, some teachers can teach for an idiot. And I appreciate, that I can be an idiot, and I appreciate that people that can talk to me instead of down to me. And this has been my whole agenda on all these sharings, is never to find myself talking down, because basically we discover the simplicity of all of us, and everything is simple. It doesn't always appear to be, but that's the veil I'm talking about. So in the process of these veils, and unveiling, illuminating, making new discoveries, this life is beautiful, because it's an endless opportunity is provided for new discoveries. And the thing that's beautiful with these discoveries is that it's not unique to us. All of us will share the same clarity and the continuity of clarity, the continuation of clarity, as we advance in our never-ending spiritual awakening, in the process, in the spiral. So one of the veils that got lifted was about mathematics. And mathematics, I remember early on I was quite good, elementary school. I remember in the 6th grade, and I went to a school that had, we lived in a little farming community, but strawberry farmers, and we had a lot of Japanese and ABJs that grew up in the strawberry farms, and that some of their grandfathers had the strawberry farms, but their mothers and dads had become doctors and lawyers and highly educated, Berkeley and Stanford, and come back to this little community because they have roots there, and roots are important because grandma and grandpa is there. So I had these Asian prodigies in my class all through elementary school, which pushed the boundaries for the teacher and for us. And I'm forever grateful to those Grandpa Strawberry and Grandma Strawberry pioneers that came to Oxnard, California, many, many years ago and found the perfect amount of moisture coming off the coast. Anyway, strawberry country, and strawberry farms, and the hard work ethic, and the worshiping almost of education, and educating their sons and daughters to be doctors and lawyers and professionals, and sending their children to public school, because in those days California public school was better than most private schools. I dare say almost any private school today. We had an opportunity to have an excellent education, even in this small community of Oxnard, California, which most of you have probably never heard of, but that's okay. That's another day. So anyway, 6th grade, we took this math placement test, and even as the teacher spoke, she was so surprised. She identified me to the class as getting the highest score on this placement test, and everybody, I usually like to roam somewhere in the middle of the classroom. I wasn't comfortable up front, and I wanted to be close enough to interact with the teacher without feeling the pressure of front row. Later on, I grew to appreciate front row. First row, left-hand seat is called the genius seat, and I tried to get that in a lecture as an adult. I want to sit in the front row, but the left hand, the speaker's left hand. First seat, the end seat on the first row. the seat of the genius, because you're close enough without the eye contact, without being challenged, or with being able to completely focus and not being self-conscious at all. If the speaker or the teacher looked to you with a question, you could choose when to answer. But anyway, at that time, I was kind of a middle-of-the-road guy. I like to be in the middle. I can remember the students turn around and looking at me. This is my Asian friends. Huh? And that was it. That was my... that was it. That was the peak of my mathematical formal recognition. That I don't know what happened. But anyway, math was not my strong point, and I barely got... It was the last class preventing me to get my undergraduate degree in university. I was a senior taking math still, math 100, that beginner's level of math. Kind of a summation of high school math at best, okay? Anyway, this has all happened since June. The Trikaya is the three Buddhas talked about, especially Mahayana Buddhism. And Mahayana Buddhism is more kindred to, from the Indian Hindu tradition compared to Hinayana, the lesser vehicle, the greater vehicle. It feels more familiar and similar to the teachings that Bodhidharma, Dhamma we call them here, that took to China, that became Chan and Zen, and sitting became Zazen. But anyway, that fabric of Mahayana Buddhism, the greater vehicle, seemed more in kinship with what I was to study later in my deep Zen studies. But math is never one part of the equation. And this Trikaya that I was talking about, where you're number one, the initial awakening after you've taken the leap off the abyss and all the things I talked about many times previously, once you've given up all your fears and you leap, you become the beloved, the baby Buddha. And you have to mature in a Buddha, as in your Buddhahood. And it's an ongoing process. You always get an opportunity to mature, no matter how long you've been at it. There's always room for jello, as I mentioned to my brother the other day, an old ad. There's always room for jello. There's always room for improvement. And this first, I guess it's been 8 years, 7-8 years, since I had the experience of leaping and waking up an infant Buddha and the maturity of a Buddha. And then somewhere about 4 years. So I have 4 years. I have two ways to calculate. It's either 6 years or 8 years. A Buddha year is I think 6 years. So probably at the Buddha age of 24 is when I started. Step 2, the second Buddha became part of me, and that's the process of loving. So we have the lover and then the process, and the process of loving is the Dharma. And the Dharma is the unspeakable wisdom of the Buddhas that has only been transmitted heart to heart, and is critical. And you do this by living it, breathing it, sharing it as best you can, trying to put it into words at all the times, reminding the listeners that it's only your take on what happened. Everything I've shared about it has to come from my frame of reference, and your frame of reference is different, and so you'd experience the same phenomenon in a completely different, at least you would choose to express it in perhaps a completely different way. And I'm open to I've listened to other people's sharings about even though it's very limited, Adyashanti is probably the only one that I know of that is so open. He's still writing books about sharing this process of awakening. And he's the first person that I saw when he had the first year or two of his teachings, way back in 1993 or 94 at the East West Center in Honolulu, at University of Hawaii. Jessica and I, a friend and I, were blessed with an opportunity, and he spoke openly about being awake, being a Buddha. And I remember my friend standing up, Jessica's the beautiful soul, says, "Oh, it's got in line first, the question period," and she says, "Well, I don't really know how to act. I've never been around a Buddha before. So this is the first time, so pardon me if I make some mistakes." And he laughed and he said, "No, you've been around Buddhas before, but you just weren't aware. Not everyone proclaims. In fact, it's better left unsaid." He told us that it's better left unsaid, but he just felt his mission from the very beginning was, much as mine has been, is to share. Because otherwise, if I experience these things, it would be quite easy to think it's a psychotic or schizophrenic episode, because things have been that bizarre, But having some trust and that taste of being home, that longing to go home, which is remembering the forgotten, awakening, that longing that I've had from infancy. So it was never really in jeopardy, but it was nice as I got past my own awakening to discover that Adyashanti had continued. I don't know enough about from 1993 or 94 up until 2018, let's say. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know if he was still openly sharing. I know he's teaching, obviously, great teacher, and a special soul, awakened soul, which I take upon, only can say that because I trust him, because ultimately only we can know. I can tell you that I've awakened from the dream. I can tell you that I was talking about the second Buddha, the process of loving, the Dharma, living the Dharma. The Dharma just means the teachings, Buddhist teachings, spiritual teachings. And this happened probably 4 years ago. And then just recently, this June, the Trayakaya, the three Buddhas was complete. When the beloved, the last is the lover, the process of loving, and the beloved. When Buddha actually asked me, can you imagine? Asked me, they need your permission, asked me to come and permanently reside in me. This is a completion of the Trikaya. And it was after that all of a sudden this mathematics just started popping in my head. Like, how many awakened people are there? How many Buddhas are there right now? The followers of my previous teacher, they claimed that he was the only one, and I never swallowed that. Chinese, they want to be the only and the best, and maybe that's human nature. Why study with somebody if he's not the best, if they're a dime a dozen? But I found that's far from being a dime a dozen. It's 0.0001 times 7.8 billion. And it may be, I'll do the math again. I believe it's 4 zeros and a 1. 1 millionth of the people. So 78 billion divided by 1 million. Could that be 7,800? I didn't say that I mastered math. I just said that these formulas. And then I knew, 0.0001. 780 potential acolytes There's only 780,000 people in the world right now as I sit looking at you. According to this gift of mathematics, when a veil lifted, one of the veils, the gauze, the gossamer veil lifted, was given these very specific numbers. So that means there's a potential of 780,000 acolytes, people that are dedicated, are committed enough to really work on the process of awakening. We're all working on it, even though we're not aware of it. But there's 780,000 that are on the cusp. So that leaves for 7,800 teachers, that's approximately 100 potential students that are serious. They're willing to fully commit. That's the idea. That would rather that than anything else. Rather be doing spiritual work than anything else. Nothing is even, everything pales in significance to this drive. And the drive leads to questions, which leads to the investment in doubt, and the investment in exhausting the questions, in learning to become fearless. All those things in the process of awakening, leading up to. And then as you awaken, you get to truly experience in the process, just before you awaken. My process was realizing how funny the idea that we live in a dualistic us and them. And the end of duality, non-duality was the best they could come up with, everything, the oneness of all. And finding it so funny to understand that opposites, what I thought has seen as opposites, were indeed one and the same thing, just different part of the spectrum, different part of the sphere. And that yin-yang, the black and white symbol, the interlocking black and white symbol, the white representing the feminine with the masculine, the yang with the little black dot, and the black representing the yin with the little white dot, so that within the most feminine is some masculine, and within the most masculine is some feminine, and they're interlocked. Tai Chi, they call it here. Maybe I got it. Tai Chi? Yeah. Again. So this propensity to visit mathematics, at the same time I was getting these numbers. And I didn't ask for them, they were just gifted me. And I was also told at the same time that 7,800 people alive, Buddhas alive in this world, but 80% of them are not interested in teaching. They just live simple lives. It could be the guy that sweeps the temple steps. It could be the Journey to the East, Hermann Hesse's great book. It was the man who took care of the horses, the stable keeper who took care of the horses, that was the Buddha in the whole story, as these great spiritual adepts of renown went on this mystical journey to the East, looking for something that was not only walking right beside them unnoticed, but could only come from within. That's the only source. So the other part of mathematics that this had earlier, this specific numbers were just recent, and after the completion of the Trikaya, when the beloved became, when I became, the beloved merged with me. The completion of the three Buddhas. But previous to that, numbers, I started being really interested in the infinitesimally small and the unmeasurably large. The universe, the macrocosm and the microcosm. I could go so small. There was a time when I experienced, this is another thing I experienced post the beloved, post the Trakaya, the completion of the Trakaya, is at the moment it happened, I was aware of every cell in my body. In fact, it went to an atomic level. I was aware, consciously aware of every atom in my body. And then I realized that the chemical reactions, I think 80% of chemical reactions in your body is in your upper spine or in your head. It's 18 billion per second. And I was aware of every one of those 18 billion chemical reactions. Just as aware as I was of every cell, every atom, every subatomic particle, every neutrino that was traveling through the universe and passing through our body carrying information, I was consciously aware of. And of course, it didn't last long. I would explode. I don't have the capacity. Just as in the learning process, the being introduced, I pictured that Library of Alexandria, and the bookshelves and bookshelves that from to the ceiling, and just as far as my peripheral vision could go, kept spilling and spilling. And as they spilled, I was exposed to every word in every book. And at that point, I knew beyond doubt that everything that could be known, will be known, can be known, and is known, I knew. Not only did I know, but I knew that I could have access to them whenever it was necessary. When I need to know, I will know. The rest is accessible. And when I stumble on something, it's because my mouth got ahead of my brain, and accessing my jhana yoga path that I chose was the one of wisdom, and wisdom is taking information and looking for, sorting out, throwing out the useless, and getting knowledge, and doing the same process again, sorting and discarding and gleaming the nuggets of wisdom. Now, the nuggets of wisdom are uncountable. So you have to develop, I had to develop some process. I went through sorting. Then I needed to file. Now I have these nuggets. I need to file them. So sorting, finding, filing, storing, and that last little bit was access. And I can just share with you in closing here that I have a little guy that has one of those sliding ladders that you might have seen with the huge bookcases, and he has a little gambler's hat, visor, and he's old man, but he scoots along, and he physically has to find the book and locate the passage of the information that I needed at the moment. Thank you, little guy. Thank you for listening. Love you all.